Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear us and see us. What was that noise? That was weird. I can hear, like, something on your
A
end.
humming.
Yeah.
Don't worry. When I turn the noise cancellation on, it'll go away.
Okay.
I have new neighbors,
And they're
and
mowing the lawn.
they've hired people to trim down all the trees in the area.
Okay.
So this is all I hear now.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. We'll be starting in just a second. I should do a mic test because I haven't done that yet. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Brilliant. That worked. We can begin when Dan's ready.
Okay, let's see. Bring up the notes. And I am now recording.
I am now recording as well.
3, 2, 1. Welcome to another episode of the Windows Central podcast, episode 240 for September 3rd, 2021. Hey everyone, Daniel Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central podcast. Hopefully you're not hearing background noise. If you're not, that's because of the amazing NVIDIA broadcast app, which went to version 1.3 this week. We're not going to really talk about it. Just got some improvements with the processor, GPU, and a couple other things. But I do use that app regularly, and it filters out all the background noise, which is good because my neighbors are doing a lot of yard work, and it sounds like I'm working on a construction site. Anywho, let's get to the news this week. We have quite a lineup for this show, including the Windows 11 launch date is now official. We'll go through that. Some bad news: the Android app thing for Windows 11 is delayed, although it did make an appearance in the store. So it's close, but it won't launch. We'll talk about what that all means, of course, and maybe why it's not that big of a deal. Speaking of things announced, apparently there's a Surface event happening on September 22nd. So we'll go through that news. And there was some Windows 11 news this week with new builds coming out. Not a whole lot new, but the dev channel did finally break off into its own thing. But that really wasn't the news that rounded up this week. I think it was apparently a lot of us had crashing on Windows 11 last night with our taskbar, start menu, and entire shell just going kaput. We'll talk about why that happened, maybe what it was, and how dumb it might have been. It's one hell of a story, that's for sure. We'll talk about some laptop reviews. There were two that went up this week. Budget laptops, so for those of you looking for new devices that you could run Windows 11 on, or you just need something that's affordable, we have two, one better than the other. One of them is AMD at least, so that's pretty good. And speaking of, I have a rant that will be going up on the site probably during this podcast, basically saying no one's going to buy a new laptop or PC for Windows 11. And that's a hidden kind of meaning, though. So I'll go through and explain what I mean by that, because it's a little bit devious. Anyway, I am wearing Galaxy Bud 2s this week. So if you're watching the video, I don't know. People still make fun of me for the Surface earbuds.
Yeah, I know, but I think what you're wearing now looks worse. But then again, I guess it's because it's new and I'm just not used to it yet.
I don't disagree. I think these things look weird.
Yeah. They look like growths.
Look like part of that is probably the color, which I got the olive to match the phone, and perhaps white or black would have been better. But I don't know. It's they sound very good.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. Well, I'll probably go back to the Surface earbuds. I found them a little bit more conducive for a podcast. But anyway, let's get to it, Zach. The Windows 11 event, October 5th.
Yes, that is correct.
Explain to us what happened and what this all means.
So yes, Microsoft this week announced that Windows 11 will begin shipping on October 5th. That is on new PCs with Windows 11 pre-installed, as well as existing eligible Windows 10 PCs. So if you are running a PC that meets all the minimum system requirements for Windows 11, on October 5th, you may or may not start seeing the update in Windows Update. Now, it will be an optional update. This will never be forced upon you for the lifespan of Windows 10. But it will be there in Windows Update, and if you want it, you can hit download and install, and then the process will continue just like a normal Windows 10 feature updates. Of course, that obviously depends on if you do meet those minimum requirements. If you don't, this will never be an option to you. You can manually install, as we've talked about extensively at this point, via the ISO or the media creation tool. You just won't see it through Windows Updates. Microsoft has also said that they will be rolling out Windows 11 in a sort of phased and measured approach, which is what they've done with previous feature updates as well. And they do this just to ensure that the updates actually working well on the existing PCs. So they'll probably start with a very small group at first. So if you don't see it on day one, don't be surprised. I don't think most people are going to see it on day one. This will be a very small subset of users in the production channel. And then over the course of this fall into mid-2022, they will sort of expand that and roll it out to more and more people until all of the Windows 10 PCs that are eligible have at least been offered the updates. I don't know if Microsoft... I would love to see what Microsoft's projections are as to how many people will accept the update, because it is a free update. You don't have to pay for it. Again, for the most part, on the end users... For the end user, it'll be one button. You click it, you install it. And I assume there will be pop-ups that appear. I don't think it'll just, you'd have to discover it yourself. I think you will get ads that pop up in the Action Center and stuff that says, hey, Windows 11 is now available, because they will want people to upgrade to Windows 11. But yeah, we will be really interested to see. Yeah, people are commenting. I did get the date wrong. My prediction was October 19th for the GA date. And the Windows Twitter account did call me out for that. And hey, fair game. I made a bold prediction and it turned out to be wrong. I will give some sort of backstory to that though. Microsoft's internal GA date was October 19th for a very long time. I heard that date back in October last year and I just assumed it hadn't changed, which is silly of me because dates change all the time internally at Microsoft. So yes, October 5th is the official date. And that is when that will begin rolling out. The question, of course, is will that be when new services begin rolling out? Because obviously we know about this. There's a new Surface hardware event, which we'll talk a bit more about later in the show, which is on the 22nd of September. So that's about 2 weeks between then and Windows 11 shipping. So the new PCs can't ship until October 5th at the earliest. The question is, will they be ready in time for October 5th? We don't know at this point. Things are up in the air regarding all the Surface hardware and what will be available where because of the chip shortage and whatever else. So that'll be interesting to talk about. Are you surprised by the GA date, Dan, or is this totally what you was expecting?
Well, it is a little bit earlier, right?
I thought so too.
I think because we were expecting sort of a Surface event
around
first
that time
week of October.
Yeah. So
in fact, we're saying October 6th.
Yeah, so I heard originally that the plan was to announce the Duo 2 independently on September 22nd, and then a Surface event would probably be around October 5th, 6th, and then they would roll out October 19th. That was kind of their, I think, original plan for this, but for some reason they brought everything forward. I don't know why. Maybe OEMs were asking for it because they want to get their stuff out there for the holiday season. I don't know. But everything's been brought forward.
Zach. It was spite.
Yeah,
just to prove you wrong.
Exactly, and they proved me wrong very publicly. So well done, Microsoft.
Yes. Yeah. No, I think it is interesting that it's come forward a bit. We don't know as far as new laptops.
Right. Yeah.
I know there are a few laptops coming out, but we really haven't been briefed yet on that next wave of Windows 11 products. And there's a lot of questions about that, which I'll talk a little bit about later too. Are we going to see not just the XPS 13, now with Windows 11? I expect that. I think that's a pretty low bar. Are we going to see like new products, like new devices with Windows 11 on it to help spice up the launch? That's traditionally how it's gone.
Yeah.
I would say with Windows 8, it was a bigger deal because that was also coinciding with the concept of a 2-in-1 PC and tablet PCs at the time. That was really a big push for all that new hardware. I don't know with Windows 11, this was supposed to be sort of the dual screen foldable era already. That was all shelved with Windows 10X and pushed back. We still believe that's going to happen, but Microsoft is focused strictly right now on single screen devices and getting Windows 11 right. I think they'll come back around to the dual screen stuff later,
Yeah.
because the underlying reasoning for that hasn't changed. It's just the priorities have. So I'm curious what new devices we're going to see, whether they're going to be exciting. But there's a lot of questions there, I
Yeah.
suppose.
I would be
In terms
interested.
of general,
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah.
You finish your
No, I was
thought.
just going to say, in terms of general availability, yeah, I expect if you have a new 2020 and 2021 PC, you'll be the first in line to get this, because it just works. Things work better with newer hardware, right? That's just kind of the way it goes. Whereas I think if you have a 2018 device, you may be on the back end. And we should explain, if seekers, quote unquote seekers, want to get this, they would still be able to do that too, correct? Or
Well, it would depend if the prompt shows up in Windows Update, because that's what it hinges on, really. If there's no prompt in Windows Update, you can't seek it, because there's no sort of manual seek for this update, since it's not going to be forced upon you. So it will be. You can see it. I think it will be. Technically, everybody will have to seek it, but it's just whether or not you're allowed to seek it, because that's what the rollout's about. Yeah.
And of course, when do we think the final ISOs will drop around that time as well?
Yeah, I would assume it's usually before the GA date itself. So I heard that a final build, in air quotes, will be sort of done by mid-September. So I would assume mid to late September is when those ISOs will be made available in MSDN. I think it's called MSDN still. And I guess to insiders and the media creation tool and stuff. And then that's obviously in preparation for October 5th. And then it will begin rolling out gradually through Windows Update.
Because that's always the ultimate solution, right? You just download the ISO, do a media creation tool, stick a thumb drive in, you'll upgrade to, and we should mention that will just be an actual upgrade process. It'll do the same thing. It doesn't need to wipe your computer. You could do that too. Sometimes it's good to have a clean start, as some people did that last night, unfortunately. But if you really want this, you can do it that way. And that also applies to basically any unsupported hardware too. So
the first version of Windows 11 is basically almost ready to go, which is super interesting. Interestingly, in this announcement, they also very slyly announced that Android apps will not be part of this first version of Windows 11.
Yes.
Which is, I think we were
email exchange about that, which we'll save for another podcast.
Yeah, I think we all sort of expected this, considering where we are in the year and when Windows 11 was rumored to ship, which was October, and the fact that Android app still isn't in testing with insiders. I think we all kind of sort of assumed that this wouldn't be shipping in time, and Microsoft did in fact confirm that yes, Android app support will not be shipping this fall with Windows 11 version 1.0. Unfortunately, they didn't give any other context, so we don't actually know when it will show up. We don't know if it will show up in a sort of servicing update for the first version of Windows 10 in early 2022, or if Microsoft will hold and ship it as part of the next feature update for Windows 11, which is scheduled for the second half of 2022. So we don't know at this point, but it did show up in the Microsoft Store. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. It's sort of like a placeholder more than anything, but so that sort of confirms that yes, they are testing it internally. Apparently it's delivered through the Microsoft Store, though that may not be the case when it actually ships to the public. And the minimum system requirements for it are 8 gigs of RAM on a 64-bit CPU or an ARM 64-bit CPU. So ARM 64 CPU. So yes, that's interesting. But yeah, we have no details as to how this works still, really. Microsoft has not given any live demos. All the demos they've shown have been sort of pre-rendered concept things. We are in the dark on this. We don't know how it performs, if it's good, if it's bad. And the fact that it's not ready to ship yet probably implies that it's not great.
I think it's probably a safe bet. Talk about Inception. So you got to load Windows. You could be running Windows 11 right now on Windows 10 as a virtual machine. Load up the store to install an Android subsystem, which then has a store in it from Amazon to load Android apps. That is some insane level of inception going on there. You're right though about questions. There's a ton of them when it comes to how Android apps are going to run. I know immediately people are like, oh, you just click it. You can do a full screen car racing game from the store, use your Xbox controller. I don't think so. I mean, maybe that'll all be there, right? But these are still going to be technically phone apps. There'll be phone apps. Some of them will be optimized for tablet. I don't know what that means for the various aspects on Windows in terms of display sizes and everything. Can you stretch and resize them like a window? Probably not. They're probably going to be very fixed. Just kind of like, I don't think it's going to be radically different from your phone. And if you have a Samsung device and how you can launch apps independently, they launch as sort of vertical looking apps. And there's not a lot of stuff you can do. Yeah, you can use a keyboard and mouse with them, which is cool. But I think, this keeps coming back to that question about how valuable or interesting this stuff is going to be. I'm one of those people that's totally on the fence because, like, I don't know if you're going to be able to really, you could probably play a video game on it. Is it just going to be cool? Like, versus a small little window on your big PC? Like, is it going to be really worth it to do that? I don't think so. And even then, simpler things like Kindle.
Yeah.
Like, oh, finally, we get a Kindle app. Yeah, but can you actually expand it to your full screen or do something like that so it's useful? One of our writers, Sean, did a editorial talking about his disappointment in this. He's really looking forward to this because in his head, he has this idea he likes the tablet experience of Windows, which God bless him. I hate tablets. But he has this idea in his head. He's going to use a Windows tablet and he's going to launch it. He's going to have Android apps and it's going to be sort of like this weird combo of an iPad, Windows, Android experience. And maybe, right? But we just don't know at this point. I personally think this is just going to suck. And I think it's just going to be a novelty that some of us will click through, but most of us won't make use of it daily. I'd love to be proven wrong in that. Maybe I will, but a lot of questions.
I suspect this is the kind of thing that will work better the more powerful PC you're using it on. If you're running on a Surface Go, it's probably not going to be great. If you're running on like an Intel Core i9, because remember you're virtualizing Android underneath. It's not like you're virtualizing an entirely different operating system, which is adding to the resources that your PC is required to sort of get everything running. I think it's going to be the exact same sort of experience as Win32 programs were on Windows 10X, although I think that's a very sort of extreme example of that. It'll probably be like Project Astoria on Windows 10 Mobile when they were testing that. It worked and it was okay, but it was slow. Like you would tap on an app and it would load, and then it'd be like it would take a little bit because it's booting up Android before it can load up your app. But then once that's running, it can sort of run in the background. So if you open up more apps, it can in theory be quicker once you've loaded the first app. But again, like it will be really interesting how this works on the sort of low end side of things. But hey, if you need it today, you can download BlueStacks.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's the bar, right? All they have to do is just be slightly better than BlueStacks, which is already not great. And there you go. We did get an offer from BlueStacks that they could run in a paid article on our site, basically boasting about BlueStacks, which is how this industry works. I should point out, like, we get these pitches all the time. I should also rightly point out we don't accept that stuff. We don't. I mean, if we ever did, it would be clearly marked as an ad, as we do legally. But we don't accept paid written articles from sponsors or something like that, which is a weird thing. It really does blur that thing between journalism and like advertisement. But BlueStacks is like, they saw the fact that this is delayed and are like, this is our moment. And it's basically their last moment, right? Because I feel that when this does hit, it will kind of really negate. And it's a shame, right? People worked hard on BlueStacks for many years. They made a small business out of it. But that's what happens sometimes, right? Companies like Microsoft, Apple do
technically
this.
there may still be a selling point to BlueStacks in that. I think BlueStacks supports Play Store services, which is, I think, a big selling point for them. Whereas, obviously, the Microsoft version, at least officially, will not. So, yeah, so I think there might still be benefits to BlueStacks in certain areas. But, yeah, who knows at this point? Again, we haven't seen the Microsoft versions. It could be terrible. It could be worse than BlueStacks. We don't know. We just don't know. So, yes, Android apps delayed, not coming this year. Microsoft did say it will go into preview in the coming months. Again, very vague. That could be any time between now and December this year. And I probably won't be. I think we won't see it until January, February next year. But I could be wrong on that. That's just me speculating. In regards to previews, real quick, we should talk about this week's Windows 11 builds. Two builds rolled out this week, one for the dev channel, one for the beta channel. It's finally happened. The beta and dev channels have diverged. So dev is now moving on to whatever's coming next. So whatever the dev channel is now previewing, for the most part, will not be shipping as Windows 11 version 1 or 21H2, or whatever you want to call it, the October 5th release. Dev channels moved beyond that. The beta channel is still testing fixes for that October 5th release. So we'll start with the beta channel. Minor changes here. They've removed the ability to right-click and unpin the sort of system app icons on the taskbar. So that includes task view widgets, search, and Teams chat. So you can no longer right-click unpin them. You have to right-click, go into taskbar settings, and then turn them off through there. And at first, when I saw this, I was kind of annoyed that they've done that, because it just makes it more difficult to unpin them, because I think they were sort of expecting people, or anticipating people would quickly unpin them without even trying them. But a few people sort of explained it to me, and it does make sense why they would do this. For example, how it was before is if you would unpin, say, the Teams chat icon, there was no obvious way to get that back, because there's no repin menu when you right click the taskbar. So if you just send everybody to the menu, which allows you to turn it off and on, it tells the user, hey, this is where you can turn it back on if you want to. So I think that does actually make sense. So I'll allow it, Microsoft. On the surface, looks terrible, but if you think about it, it makes sense. So I'll allow it. And then everything else in that build is basically fixes. In the dev channel, we've moved back to the RS_underscore pre-release branch. We're on build 22449. Nothing huge in this build, very minor stuff. They've changed I should pull up the changelog. They've changed how the SMB compression thing works. I should have definitely prepared for this, and now my keyboard isn't working. There we go. blogs.windows.com. I will say that interestingly, the dev channel build doesn't have that unpin change for some reason. I think that was because that they just haven't compiled it into that branch yet, and that will likely show up in the next build. So yes, they've updated the SMB compression behavior change. Based on testing and analysis, we have changed the default behavior of compression. Previously, the SMB compression decision algorithm would attempt to compress the first 500 megabits of a file during transfer and track that at least 100 megabits compressed within that 500 megabyte range. If fewer than 100 megabits were compressible, SMB compression stopped trying to compress the rest of the file. Blah, 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 blah. Starting in this build, we will no longer use this decision algorithm by default. Instead, if compression is requested, we will always attempt to compress. So there you go. I have no idea what I just told you, but that's a thing that's been changed. They've also updated the progressive ring animation on the boot screen, which is now more in line with the Windows 11 UI, so that's nice. But that's basically all the sort of big changes in this build. They've also added acrylic to the pop-up notifications, which surprisingly actually doesn't have it on Windows, the first version of Windows 11. I did not notice until they pointed that out, which is kind of annoying. But there you go. That's basically it for the builds. Though there was a bit of drama around. It wasn't technically. It wasn't even part. It wasn't to do with the build specifically, but it's part of the insider program, so I think we should mention it. Dan, you were sort of all over this, so take it away.
Hold on, I'm just typing something.
Okay.
Sorry. We're having a discussion in the chat right now, which Android apps would be useful. Someone's saying Google Earth. Google Earth is super cool, and most people use it once. They launch it, it spins around, and you're like, that's neat, and you have no use for it. So it kind of backs up this idea that there will be niche use cases, right, where you need that one app that's on Android that's not available on Windows that you could think of that would be kind of cool to use. And I'm not disputing that. My thing is, I'm not sure as an overall feature, this is something that people are going to use daily and frequently, or a lot of people will make use of, but maybe I'm wrong on that. And this would also point out that they use Google Earth for measuring distances, which is actually kind of an interesting thing. But that was something that was showed up by Microsoft years ago with Microsoft Maps, where you can actually just take a pen and ink on the map, draw between two distances, and it would actually tell you in mileage in distance like what that is in real life, which I always thought was a super cool thing, which I've never literally actually used. But what a cool idea. And that's actually live, and you can even bring up the ruler and all that kind of stuff. Getting to Zach's point here, yes. So last night, I think we all remember where we were. I was just finishing up an editorial, and I was like, I didn't install the latest build that Zach was just talking about, because I had drivers from Razer sitting, waiting to be installed. So I installed those first, and that superseded downloading and installing a new version of the operating system. And that, of course, caused me all sorts of confusion later on because I had to restart the computer for those drivers. So boom, did it. I was done with the night, was about to walk away. Computer comes back on. It's taking a little bit while after it logged me in, and it goes to the desktop, and the taskbar and start menu are just gone. And since I'm not a savage monster and I don't pin things to my desktop, or I hide it, I just had a blank canvas.
Yeah,
There's just nothing there. Now you could use, Task Manager to bring up functions. And if you're cool, you know how to use Task Manager to launch things. And if you're really, really cool, you know, you can launch commands, the command prompts, and start typing in commands. I had to look up half that stuff. I forgot. I've been using that in such a long time. So immediately I'm like, oh my God, what happened, right? And I knew I didn't install the latest build, so that wasn't my worry. And I was like, oh, a driver, something, I don't know. But it was the end of the night, and I have like 20 computers, so it's like, I'll take care of this in the morning. Later that night, I was on the couch, and someone had messaged me on Twitter, and they're like, hey, have you seen this? And it was a Reddit thing. And it was like 200 people all saying basically same thing I experienced. No desktop, no taskbar, no start menu. I was like, oh, this is a thing. So I was like, let me go write an article. And then I was like, oh wait, my desktop doesn't work. So I was going through the Reddit thread, and there were people chiming in with ideas. And the first one was kind of the simplest, which was you were to create a new user account. And doing so, for some reason, worked. A new local account worked. I think it was because it wasn't tied to your Microsoft account. So I wrote a how-to on how to do that. And then someone else was like, oh, if you set the day like a day or two ahead, it'll fix it. And that was true, but then a lot of people are like, oh, but it went back to it soon after. And someone figured out, oh, it's because it's syncing internet time. So if you disable syncing internet time and change the day ahead and just reboot, you're good to go. The problem is when you launch Windows, you can't get into like the settings, right? Because it doesn't exist now. And relaunching explorer.execute doesn't fix anything, right? So this isn't that kind of issue. So you still had to go into Task Manager and then run task control.x, go to the old control panel, and then navigate and do this time stuff. It was a little tricky, but honestly, it took like less than 3 minutes once you knew how to do it. Mark, as I'm writing all this, I've been doing screenshots, and it's just like I just had a beer. I'm like, come on, like it's the end of the night. You know, don't need this. As I'm like kind of publishing all this stuff, Microsoft finally chimes in on the blog and they basically, let's see, let me get the exact wording because the word.
If you want me to read it.
Oh, I got it now. Recently, Windows insiders in both the dev and beta channels began reporting that the Start taskbar were unresponsive and settings in other areas of the OS wouldn't load. We quickly discovered an issue with a server-side deployment. So this is the key part that went out to insiders and canceled that deployment. If you were impacted by this issue, you can use the following steps to get back into a working state on your PC, which is the solution here is actually easy, but it's actually not if you don't have, because you had to go Control-Delete, Task Manager, more details, go to File, Run New Task, go to the command prompt. In the open field, you had to write in a deletion of a registry key.
Yes.
And if you've ever seen a registry key, they're very long. They have forward and backslashes and spaces that are very important because it has to be exact. But as soon as you hit that enter button, the computer would then reboot, which was alarming. But then you were good to go. So that was the fallout from all this. So technically, it was an easy solution, but you needed another screen to know how to do this. So it was, if you were just a normal person,
right,
just running Windows 11, and you're like, oh, I'm going to be on the beta or dev channel, this was devastating. I mean, your computer turned on. There was no computer.
Yeah.
And to tell people, go, oh, just Control-Alt-Delete, Task Manager, Command Prompt, like most people don't remember or know how to do that stuff. this was easily one of the top 5 worst bugs I've ever seen come from Microsoft on the insider channels. And the thing is, it was technically not dependent on being beta or dev. It wasn't even it wasn't pushed out through Windows Update. This
Right.
came through another task. And so that was the fallout from last night. This morning now, and this kind of goes into the other story, this developer, Daniel, I'm going to butcher his name, Alex Anderson? Maybe that's how you pronounce it. I think it looks pretty close. He also makes Edge Deflector, which we just wrote about, lets you choose your own browser in Windows 11, Windows 10. He has a control blog, and he said he took a quote, I took a closer look at what got downloaded and caused the Windows desktop shell to become unresponsive. The problem wasn't caused by an update delivered through Windows Update, which he says would have been more understandable. Instead, it was caused by a small file downloaded by a Windows component called Iris service. Iris is part of Windows Spotlight, the big wallpaper of the day, tips, promotions, and suggestions on the lock screen. He says he narrowed the problem down to a registry key that contained a serialized JSON blob. The blob contained an advertisement from Microsoft Teams. The messaging and imagery in the promotion were identical to the panel you get when you press the Windows key plus C on a Windows account. So basically, if you've ever seen that little pop-up for the new Teams chat feature, that's what this was. And basically what happened was that's the server-side thing. This came from Microsoft servers to people's computers, and when they restarted, for some reason it crashes the entire shell. How do those things get connected?
Yeah.
And I think that's what the devastating thing here is. It's like, how does a cloud-based feature that's meant to be just a pop-up wreck the entire shell? That should not happen ever. Now, Zach, can you share? You actually got a little bit more detail on this. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'd dive too much into it. So it was a test sort of push. Right? So this wouldn't have ever hit production even if Windows 11 was out. I think this was only really designed for the insider program, and there's something within the shell that sort of analyzes these tests, and there was some line in some code or whatever in that testing thing, it wasn't working correctly. And it could have been anything, right? It could have been the formatting of the pop-up, it could have been, who knows, it could have been a whole bunch of different things. But what it didn't crash the shell, it hung the shell. Like the shell would stop loading up to it. Like there's a process for loading the complete shell, and it would only load X amount of it, which is why the taskbar was still visible, but nothing in the taskbar was visible.
It's also, sometimes when you click on it, it would like spin around for a second.
Yeah, exactly. So there were sort of it was interesting, but I don't think this would have ever hit production. I'm not saying that's impossible. Like if this, since it was a test, and I guess the test worked and that it doesn't work, so they know it doesn't work now. If this was a test that passed here, then went to production and broke in production, that would have been a big deal, because that would have been millions and millions of PCs. Whereas since it only hit the insider program, it was only a very small amount. Yeah, there was a 2-hour window. So if you logged in after this had been deployed, this sort of test ad, or whatever you want to call it, you would have hit this and it would have pulled it, but you wouldn't have hit the issue until you rebooted. So once they stopped the deployment, if you'd logged in and then that service checked for the latest test or whatever, that wouldn't be there anymore, so you would have been fine. So it was just a 2-hour window. If you pulled in that test as you were using your PC within that time period, and then rebooted later, you were stuck in that position. If you didn't turn your PC on between that 2-hour period, you were fine. And same with after. So yeah, it was a small window, but it was enough of a window that I hit it, Dan hit it. I think a lot of insiders on Twitter hit it. And I was confused. Well, I thought it was the build. I made a quick video on Twitter. I was like, hey, so this is happening on basically all my PCs. I assume it's the new build. That wasn't the case, of course. So yeah, this is super interesting. But again, this was for the insider program. It was a test push. And I that's what they do testing for, right? To find these issues and fix them before GA. And now, they saw this happen, and I'm sure there were some stern words this morning in the meetings about this, and it will likely probably be fixed before October 5th.
I think some of this also has to do with the fact that, if you took something like Windows 10X built from the ground up, it was going to be this kind of cloud-based hybrid operating system, but it was built from the ground up to sort of be like that. They took a lot of the great ideas from Windows 10X and are putting them into what is now known as Windows 11. But as we know, Windows 11 is basically built off of Windows 10. So you're bringing a lot of this kind of cloud-based stuff to an older shell, an older system. And I think that's what we're experiencing. Like someone brought up, and it's a really good point, when you click on the widgets icon, like sometimes, especially after you reboot a computer, you click it and like nothing's there and it takes a few seconds to load. And if the computer is offline, it's kind of useless. It's not a very elegant experience. It's stuff that can be addressed and probably will be later on. But it goes to show you that feels like something that they took from Windows 10X, patched into a version of Windows 10 that's now Windows 11. But it's that underlying cloud-based system and reliability is not quite there. And this seems to have exposed a pretty big flaw. I mean, it was just weird. Like, oh, just set your computer 2 hours, 2 days ahead and turn off internet time and it's fixed. Like, why? Why? But what it was doing was it was breaking with the server. This was a major bug. I mean, you're right. This is great. That was only on insiders, but still, it's like, they want to boast there's like 10 million insiders. It's a huge program, very successful. Then, also say that like, well, it didn't really affect that many people. I think what really needs to happen here is Microsoft needs to come out and explain what happened.
Yeah, because, I agree.
Story out, and, you brought in some information to this that wasn't public. You only got it because of people you talked to. That's cool. You can now confirm that that was very unlikely this could have ever happened in production. And that's really important information. But who's not saying that publicly is Microsoft, right? You and I are saying it on the podcast that will be listened to some core people, but the majority of people who experience this will never know. And so it does cause concern for people who want to upgrade to Windows 11. Like, well, what else could go wrong? So yeah, it's a pretty big problem.
This comes back to Microsoft's bad communication tactics, where they often decide that no information is better than an explanation when it comes to bad things. Like, I'm pretty sure to this day, Sets hasn't officially been cancelled. It's like it's delayed, or it's coming. Yeah, exactly. But we know it's not coming. Like that sort of thing. Like that bugs me so much that Microsoft cannot admit when they're wrong, or that something that they announced or tried to do didn't work. And they're just really bad at doing that, and it annoys me. But hey, there you go. It's Microsoft for you.
Yeah, it is worth mentioning quickly because just their even their PR and the way they interact with the press, it's not as bad as Apple, who's the worst, right? Apple is just like this weird fortress.
Yeah, they're very cult. Like,
yeah, if you say anything bad about them, you're out. Microsoft's not that,
right?
But they're also not like a lot of other companies that are just a lot more forthright. They almost kind of get embarrassed. And I in some ways I get it. They have to be careful with how they word things. But at the same time, what's weird is they definitely become more transparent in the last few years. They've made an effort there, but they stop at a certain point. They're like, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a shame, but hopefully they'll come out and just do a little white paper and explain exactly what happened and more importantly, what they're doing to ensure that this could never happen again, especially in the production branch. Because it was weird to happen in beta last night. And like some people in dev were like, oh, it's fine for me. And that shouldn't really happen. Right?
Yeah.
Well, hopefully that's the last of the crashing. Jesus, that was one hell of a bug. All right, Microsoft, let's move on. Speaking of new stuff, Surface hardware event announced. So again, we were October 6th because that was the date teased in the Windows 11 announcements. And I think that probably was the original plan, as Zach was saying earlier. 9/22 for Duo, keep it as a separate event. October 6th for Surface events. And then a little bit Windows 11, and you launch Windows 11 a couple weeks later in October. It seems like that would work, and that's when the devices would go on sale. Said what's happened is September 22nd, there's going to be an online event, and it's going to be new hardware and Windows 11. And so there you go. It happens at 11 a.m. Eastern time. It's online. You can just stream it. It's not clear if press are going to be there yet. I have heard some things that some press may be going. And they're going to announce new hardware. Now, we've talked a lot about in this podcast about what we expect. We can recap that briefly again. Surface Go 3 seems likely. Some sort of new form factor device. We were calling it Surface Book 4, but it's very likely just a new device. Maybe a Surface Laptop Studio. We can put that in quotes because we don't know if that's its name, but it should imply it's a pull-it-forward design. Surface Pro 8 should be a big one. New processors, maybe updated design, pen and the keyboard, perhaps a bigger display to make those bezels thinner. Maybe Surface Pro X, at least a Surface Pro X Wi-Fi model. That's what Zach's hearing. And that'll be a first. They'll bring the price down. The question I have for Surface Pro X is, and this for me goes 50-50. Are they going to just go, oh, and last year's Surface Pro X now is Wi-Fi only? And like it'll be a single sentence in the press release, right? I could totally see them doing that.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it ships with Windows 11.
So interestingly, the hero image for the event website is a Surface Pro X, or what looks to be a Surface Pro X. It's thin enough. It has the sort of connect port in the same place as the Pro X and stuff. So maybe there's more to the Pro X refresh than just Wi-Fi only. Maybe they do have an SQ3 based on some HCX Gen 3 or something lined up. I would suspect there's updates to the display because one, that teaser image sort of has a very bright display, which could suggest things like HDR and whatnot. But also I think a higher refresh rate is almost guaranteed at this point, considering Windows 11 supports dynamic refresh rate. Wake on touch, wake on approach, all of that sort of stuff I think will be part of these devices. And I think that's a lot that benefits the Pro X because, the Pro X has had the new design already. I don't think we're going to see much on the outside change because that design is arguably already basically perfect, or is the future of the Surface line. I think the Pro 8 will sort of catch up to the Pro X in regards to design. I don't know if it'll be a one-to-one copy. I assume the Pro X will be a bit thicker because it needs to have vents for the i7 because it will be an Intel-based device we expect. And can you have a fanless i7 now? I don't think you can.
I don't believe so. I mean, anything's possible, but you would have to probably.
The Pro X is too thin to stick an i7 in there. I'm pretty sure.
Right. So I mean, historically, what's happened is with the Surface Pro line is the i7 version has a separate fan that goes over the cooling pipes, and then in the i5 version, they can pop that fan out, and now it's a silent PC, which is awesome. It's a huge selling point, right? That you can get a Surface Pro with a Core i5, which is great, and still have a complete fanless experience, which is cool. And then they could also use that space for the LTE model. So the LTE models where that empty slot where the fan is where they drop the modem in. So it works out kind of perfectly. That's why, I'm unsure about like if they went with AMD, for instance. I've never seen a fanless AMD. Again, it may be possible with those extra cores. It does get hotter. So those are the challenges. With Surface Pro X, I'm really, really curious because we did hear some things that, it was going to be an SQ3 Cortex A78C with bases. So this was going to be a generational shift. This was going to be a new platform for SQ3. So although it shares that same name, this is like a jump from basically with the Snapdragon 850 platform, which is what it currently is, to a Snapdragon 888 platform. And with that, you get the new Hexagon 780 GPU base and the Adreno GPU on there. The problem with this analysis is the fact that Qualcomm hasn't come out and announced that. So historically, what's happened is Qualcomm comes out and goes, here's our new Snapdragon 8CX or 9CX or 8CX Gen 3, whatever they want to call it. And then like 5 months later, a company comes out and goes, oh, we're going to do a processor with it. And then it's like another 4 months before that device comes out, right? And so Qualcomm hasn't announced this yet. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, Qualcomm announced the 8CX Gen 2, I want to say December 2019. That was a long time.
Yeah.
And so what I could happen, again, this is speculation. What could happen is Microsoft gets on stage and goes, we're announcing this with this new processor, and it's based on, and it could be like a joint announcement with Qualcomm
Yeah.
where they do that.
I did want to mention that the invite to this event they don't technically mention Surface. It mentions devices and Windows 11,
Sure.
which suggests more than just Surface at this event. This could be basically the Windows 11 launch event where, Microsoft is there and they do have their own product announcements, but they could have moments where, they're talking about some new Dells or new HPs, or Qualcomm comes out on stage and talks about its commitment to Windows 11 and here's a new PC chip that we expect to ship in XXX. That could very easily be a thing that they do at this event. We don't know that. Again, it's speculation, but based on the wording of the invite, devices and Windows 11, it doesn't say Surface devices, it just says devices. Though again, that could just be because one of the devices they're talking about is the Duo 2, which does not run Windows 11. So who knows?
Point. Well, I could read this 9 different ways.
Yeah.
So a lot of this is just kind of speculation. But yeah, for me, the Pro X question is really interesting. I'll be disappointed because I could also see, like what Zach was saying, I could see it's the SQ2 model, but it has an updated display with a higher refresh rate.
Yeah.
Ships with Windows 11. And that's basic. Oh, and a Wi-Fi only model. Like I could totally see them just doing that. That would be disappointing. It'd be cool because I love the Pro X and I'd love the higher refresh display. I mean, it will actually look amazing on it.
Yeah.
But if they can go to the SQ3 with this higher end chip based on the Snapdragon 888 platform, like that, because the performance of that is supposed to be dramatically different. So like we're talking like a massive performance jump. It could be, I'm not talking M1. I know everyone will say Apple M1. It's not going to be that high, but it will be on par with a 10th gen Core i7 processor, maybe even the H series. Like it could be a serious bump in processing power.
We would assume as well this new chip would also incorporate 5G. So this would be the first, technically second behind the Duo. First Surface PC with 5G. Which would be a nice upgrade for that line. So we've talked about this before as well. Like it's going to get harder for Microsoft to differentiate from the Pro 8 and the Pro X, assuming the Pro 8 adopts the design of the Pro X for the most part. Again, we do expect the Pro 8 to be a bit thicker because of that, the more powerful Intel chips that need to be cooled and whatnot. But for the most part, they should look basically the same. So like there will come a point where they need to differentiate each line, and I guess how they will do it at the Pro X is it's thinner, has 5G. Those are the two big ones. Whereas the Pro 8 will likely not have an LTE or 5G mode version because for some reason Microsoft doesn't do that very often on the main Pro line. It's the Pro 5 and the Pro 7 Plus, and that's the only times they've done it.
It's aggravating. Yeah. Whereas companies like HP, Dell, Lenovo have been putting LTE and even 5G into more and more laptops every year. I mean, even there's a Pavilion that has the LTE as an option, which is crazy. So Pro X is going to be the one to watch. Like I said, knowing Microsoft, we tend to be like, this would be amazing. They did all of this, and they do about half that, right? So I don't know, but that's what I'm interested in. Surface Go 3, we're expecting those newer updated chips. They are 2021 chips, so they'll be better and faster, but not a radical redesign or anything like that. And frankly, they can keep that device as is. Just put in faster chips is all it really needs. Surface Pro 8's newer Intel chips, but not 12th generation, which this is going to be one of those weird moments. I doubt it'll be 12th. It would be amazing if they did 12th because 12th haven't really been announced yet. We know they're coming. They're supposed to be coming right around the fall. But
here's what I'll say about that. The last time Microsoft adopted a chip at the launch of that chip, it went very badly for them, and that was with Skylake in the Pro 4 and the Book. And Skylake's sort of known for being a very terrible generation, the 6th gen that is, because of all the issues that they had with thermals and overheating and stuff. The Book specifically suffered dramatically because of the 6th gen chips inside it. So since then they've never done that. They've always waited and sort of grabbed onto the last gen ones because they know they work and stuff. And I would suspect that
they give them a longer test period. They can test the chips once at a time.
But I would suspect the Pro 8 has 11th gen in it. But who knows, right? Again, this is basically speculation at this point.
And 12th gen, we should mention, I believe it's Alder Lake, shifts the architecture. It changes. It's
Right.
dramatic. It becomes more like an ARM processor with big core, small core type design. The small cores can handle things in the background, run at a lower clock rate. Then the bigger cores can jump in for actually running full applications. It's going to be a big shift in how Intel chips work. In fact, Windows 11 is supposed to leverage the new scheduler task for these new chips, which is what makes it really exciting. Basically, you can think of these 12th gen Intel chips as being the first Windows 11 chips, that these are chips co-designed with the idea of running Windows 11. And Windows 11 basically is optimized to leverage its new abilities. And that's a really important thing to remember. So this idea of like a new Surface Pro 8 with that would be fantastic. But this is Microsoft. We're still waiting on Thunderbolt. I mean,
Yeah, that's a big question. Will these have Thunderbolt? Like, have they figured that out yet?
and I'm telling you, and it's funny because someone in comments this week said, well, the reason they don't do Thunderbolt is because of security reasons. It's like, no, stop right there. I said before in this podcast, I asked Panasonic, they make computers for the CIA and the military. I'm like, is Thunderbolt a security risk? They're like, what are you talking about? They're like, no. They're like, we've literally never been asked that. And they can configure their laptops with no webcam, no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, because those are security concerns. They're like, no, we've never had a vendor ask not to have Thunderbolt. I think that explanation is complete and utter BS. They don't do it because it causes problems with Surface Connect, which is basically Thunderbolt. People have to remember the amount of power that runs through that and the data transfer is basically a Thunderbolt. So they already have their own version of a Thunderbolt. And now they're asking to put a second one on there. But you only have so many lanes and power areas that can handle all that. I think that's the challenge. And they don't want to get rid of Surface Connect. And to be honest, I don't think they should. I actually really like Surface Connect. And according to them, every time they talk to their customers, people love Surface Connect.
I agree. I love it too. I think it's great.
Yeah. So it's going to be one of those things.
Yeah. So obviously as well, Surface Duo 2, we've talked about it to death at this point. We basically know everything. Snapdragon 888, 5G, 8 gigs of RAM, slightly bigger displays, bigger battery, triple camera system on the back, a selfie camera in the front, stereo speakers, blah, blah. We basically know that. We've seen the thing. It leaked in photos. So that's not going to be too much of a surprise, though, as we sort of hinted at before. There is one more sort of nice, cool design thing they've done with an aspect of that device that I think you will see in marketing because it's an easy thing to market. Anyway, I think that's basically all the sort of top ones we're expecting. We did briefly mention the Surface Book 4, which we're not entirely sure if it will be called the Book 4. This is supposed to, we call it the Book 4 because the Book line is supposed to be Microsoft's flagship laptop. They have the Surface laptop, but it's very much more of a mainstream laptop, and the Book is their sort of hero product as a laptop. It is a convertible, but it's still really a laptop first and a tablet second. So this new laptop, if this ships here, will be a sort of, not a replacement to that, I don't think, but a new sort of flagship laptop for the Surface brand, which could be called Laptop Studio or Laptop Pro. We don't know. I've been told it has a 14-inch display size with a non-detachable 2-in-1 design. That based on the Laptop Studio name I've sort of heard thrown around, I would expect it's sort of like that pull forward technique that the Studio has, which we also saw in a patent from Microsoft. But again, who knows for sure? We don't know. I've not seen pictures of the thing, so we don't know. RTX graphics on the inside. Compared to the Book, it'll have a bigger trackpad as well, because the Book's trackpad is kind of tiny. I assume it'll be more like the laptop size. But yeah, that should be their sort of hero laptop for this sort of, I guess, generation of Surface devices. And then there's one more device, which I won't talk about too much because I don't know if that will actually be at this event. If they don't announce it at this event, I will probably share more at a later date. But there's a cheaper laptop that Microsoft is working on. And by cheap, I mean like this is cheaper, supposed to be cheaper than the Surface Go. And it's basically, its only reason is to compete with Chromebooks at the very low end. Because you can buy Chromebooks for less than $300 these days. You can't really do that on the Windows side. You can, I think maybe Dell or HP has like a Stream or something you could buy.
There are PCs that are $199 and all that. They're just...
Sure. That's very true, yeah, from like no-name brands. From Amazon, I know what you're talking about, yeah. But like, think of the HP Stream series or the Dell Latitude series, that sort of device that I've heard Microsoft is working on. Again, I'm not going to share much here today because I don't know if this will be announced at this event. I just wanted to briefly mention it because if it does get announced, I want to be able to say, "See, I told you so." But yes, if they don't announce it, I'm sure we'll talk about it more in the future.
Very exciting. This may be sort of the answer to the question we've been asking, which is, without 10x, how does Microsoft take on the Chromebook and EDU markets?
Yeah.
This may be a first peek at that. We may expect there may be more secrets to Windows 11 that we don't know about, which is how modular can they make it? Can they kind of strip out components to make what Windows 10S was? But now they've kind of reworked things. Can they do that with Windows 11, but even go further?
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, we'll talk about that more if they don't announce it on the 22nd. We should probably briefly mention what we're not expecting. No Surface Studio 3. I'm almost 100% confident on that, unfortunately. I've been told that the Surface Studio 3 is not slated for this year at all. So don't expect that. Surface Neo seems unlikely, though they could have it as a one more thing. I've not heard anything. I was sort of hoping that it would be at this event, but it appears not. I think once the Duo 2 is announced, that whole version 1 Neo that what they announced will be dead because 1, it ran Lakefield, which isn't a thing anymore, and 2, the designs will be different enough that they will have to go back to the drawing board, I think, and realign them, I guess. So RIP to the Neo for now. Hopefully we'll see that maybe in 2022, but I would be surprised if it's at this event as well. Surface Laptop Go. I've not heard anything. Seems very unlikely considering the Surface Laptop Go launched only a year ago, and these Go devices usually go 18 months to 2 years before they get a refresh. So maybe it's next spring for Surface Laptop Go. I think that makes more sense. And I think that's everything in the Surface line. Accessories, we don't know anything. No, we don't know about earbuds or headphones. They're overdue, so we could totally see them, but again, not heard anything at this point. Surface Pen. There should be a new Surface Pen with haptics. It's codenamed Nabu, I think it is, Nabu. So that should likely show up at this event. And I think that covers all of our bases. If there's anything else, let me know.
It's going to be a very busy fall between that, Windows 11, new devices. Should be very exciting. The, whatever the laptop studio is or Book 4 thing is going to be, I think, the big one, literally. It may be the first time we get a Surface that can actually be a real, workstation. H series processor, RTX graphics. Like, this thing could be a real powerful laptop that can really kind of take on MacBook. Apple still have the M1 and they're expecting the M1X processor next, and I think it'll still win out there.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter because, just like my editorial coming up, no one buys a PC for Windows 11. No one also buys a computer just for the processor. Like, that's not really how
I feel like most people buy computers based on their design alone. Like, just how it looks is probably the biggest factor. It is for me.
I'll talk about reasons during that segment.
Yeah.
For now, let's turn to quickly just some hardware reviews. Lenovo IdeaPad 3 15-inch. Kale reviewed this one, Kale Hunt, my co-partner in reviewing laptops on the site. This is actually a $400 laptop. So speaking of budget, this is very much in that range. So it's good for the price, but the cons are a loose, small touchpad. Yuck. The HD display is dreadful. He actually says that. No keyboard backlight. Very common, though, at this price point. So fully understandable. No USB or Wi-Fi 6. That's a bummer. Those parts are coming down. And you're starting to see both of those on the low-end stuff. And the plastic chassis is flexible. So this is the problem when you go down to this low of a range, is you start getting these trade-offs. I mean, like, for instance, though, it does have 8 gigs of DDR4 RAM, which is actually pretty good. 10th gen Intel Core processors, PCIe, NVMe SSD. So again, those are 2 high-end kind of components that help with the performance stuff. But then you got the kind of the trackpad and stuff like that. That's not very great. And the display is 15.6 inch, but it's 1366 by 768 resolution. So that's just HD. That's not full HD.
Yeah.
Zach he's crying.
That's just disgraceful. I have to say.
Yeah, I mean, because at a 13-inch, that would be fine. Not for
Is
Zach,
it though?
but at 15 inch, you're talking, I don't know what the pixel per inch, I don't have the calculator in front of me, but that's going to be very low. And this is crazy, 220 nit display. Ooh. So 400 nits is what you want to look for when you're buying a laptop. That's going to give you the ability to kind of work outdoors a bit, or at least in bright lights. It won't be perfect. Some laptops can even go higher. Samsung has a thing that's where they can ramp it up really high. But 400 nits is kind of where the standard is now for a nice laptop. 300 nits, you start to get into that real kind of budget. It's not so great. Asus. Their displays are famously, this is why I'm not a big fan of either company. This is 220 nits. That's you can use that in a room without bright lights, basically. So that's the idea pad, but it's go read the review. That one's kind of interesting. The more interesting review, not because Kale doesn't write good reviews, but the more interesting device, of course, is the HP Pavilion Arrow 13. So I talked about this, I think, a few weeks ago. This now is a great laptop. This is on sale starting at $670. So it's more than the last one. It's a 13.3 inch, but it has a 16 by 10 display. Yes. It has a 90% screen to body ratio. So now you're not getting this. This stuff typically does not come down to just low end. It weighs only 2 pounds, which is, let's see if I can get the actual weights. It's like 0.9 kilograms, I think it is. 0.95 kilograms. That is ridiculously light. Like, I don't know a lot of Ultrabooks, like the high-end $1,300 stuff that weighs 2 pounds. This thing is like super light. But you also get a pretty decent sized battery. Just an awesome design on this thing. The display, though, is very good. So the display, they say, hits 400 nits. I actually measured at 413 nits, so this actually goes higher. It has very good color accuracy with 100% sRGB. Again, you don't get that at this range, right? That's premium level stuff. But this is Pavilion. This is their like real kind of like mid-range budget stuff. Because then you have Pavilion, you have Envy, and I love the Envy line, and then you have Spectre. So this is on the low end. And the thing is, it's running AMD chips. So you're getting the AMD Ryzen 5000 processors. So the model we have is 16 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of storage, and it has the Ryzen 7. And it was like $909. Wi-Fi 6, you do get 2 Type A ports, a Type C port, HDMI. So you get a lot of nice ports here. No Thunderbolt because it's AMD, of course. And what's kind of cool is it's like the display. It's basically full HD, 1920 by 1200. But for an extra $30, just $30, you can upgrade it to a 2K display, 2560 by 1600, which is the one I would have got. I had the full HD model, not that one. But for $30, totally. Now, they also cut the no backlight on the keyboard. That's a bummer, but you can get it for $20. Like, they let you configure for an extra $20, get the backlight on the keyboard. So that's a no-brainer. For $50, you can totally upgrade this laptop to almost a new experience, right? You can even configure the antenna. The default antenna is 1x2, but you can configure with a 2x2 antenna, which would give you better reception, basically. So this thing is it's a pretty powerful laptop. Like, it beats the Surface laptop for performance. It does very well because of the AMD stuff. And I've been critical of AMD laptops in the past because OEMs can throttle the processor, cut back performance when it's on battery power. That's true here. The SSD drops, the GPU drops, the CPU drops, but it's only around 15%. That still sucks. But I saw gaming laptops drop by 40% that were AMD before. So 15% is better, right? It's not something you're going to notice too much. I like this laptop a ton. The design is amazing. It's light. It's thin. There's just not a lot wrong with it. It's so good. Even the speakers are like on the bottom edge, but they're really nice. Bang & Olufsen, there's an equalizer, you can tune them. Like, you don't see that at this price point. This laptop, though, I use frequently. Like, I grab it on the couch all the time, which is weird. I don't think if I ever would have said I grabbing a Pavilion laptop and prefer it over my $1,400 one. But yeah, awesome trackpad, great display, good keyboard, nice ports, good processor, good battery life. Like, and you can get that for starting at like $670. That's just awesome. So that is the HP Pavilion Arrow 13. Go check it out. It's not available yet in Best Buy or Amazon, just from HP.com, but you can configure it, including picking the color, which is cool. They have 4 colors. I think this, and it's, of course, we'll get Windows 11. You'll probably get it on the first day, in fact. So if you're looking for a new Windows 11 laptop and you're looking on a budget, this thing is awesome. Just needs LTE, but now I'm just being really picky. So that's that. And speaking of, no one's going to buy a new PC for Windows 11. Now, I know what it sounds like. It's like they're going to be against Windows 11 or something like that. But really, with the CPU requirements that have come out recently, a lot of people have this conspiracy because Microsoft's an evil corporation. They want to make money. And let's face it, those CPU requirements are just, it's a mess, right? And the actual explanation for it is all over the place. It's like it's TPM, there's security stuff here, there's DCH drivers, which no one knew about, but it's been existing for the last 4 or 5 years. You know, and so Microsoft is setting the security standard for Windows 11 with this hardware requirement. They also, though, frankly say that older processors, the kernel is less stable. We saw a 50% crash rate with them versus a 99.8% crash-free experience with these certified processors. But people like to ignore that and go, the only reason Microsoft is doing this is because they want you to go buy a new laptop. I get the inclination there, and there's no doubt that Microsoft would love for you to buy a new laptop. But here's a couple of things. For one, no one goes and buys new laptops or PCs for an operating system. It doesn't happen. People buy a new laptop or PC for one reason. They need a new laptop or PC.
Yeah.
It's like a car. Yeah, I guess there are some people who just go buy a new car because they just want a new car and they're tired of the old one. Most people buy a new car when they have to buy a new car. Is that something you want to go through? It's a big pain. And buying a laptop or PC, as cool as they are now, they're not as cool as buying a new phone, which is going to be in your pocket with you 24/7. Laptops don't get that kind of cachet. So this is just a really dumb explanation. You also can't say that Windows 11 is lipstick on a pig and is just a cover for Windows 10, while also holding the argument that it's so amazing and so irresistible, so cool that people are going to run out and go buy new $1,500 hardware just to run it. Those two things don't match. It's either lipstick on a pig or it's amazing. You can't have both. I don't know which side you're going to fall on. I don't think, though, people are going to go look at Windows 11 and go, I need new hardware. What sells new hardware and why people buy new laptops, besides the fact they need one, there's a ton of reasons. You want a higher resolution display. You want pen and inking support. You want a laptop of 4G or 5G. You want to hit 10 hours of battery life. You want a new RTX GPU because you love gaming on the go. You want a 2-in-1 design. You want a tablet PC. Like, there are a dozen reasons why you should go out and maybe consider buying a new laptop. Windows 11 is not one of them, all right? Moreover, if we just went through, if you want Windows 11 on any of your devices, you can install it. Throw it on a USB key with an ISO, plug into your computer, upgrade, live life, be happy. I know people are like, oh, but Microsoft said, oh, listen, Microsoft's not going to say it's going to be fine because it defeats the purpose of them also saying it's unsupported, right? If they're saying it's unsupported, they literally can't guarantee it's going to be fine. I'm here to tell you it's going to be fine. And we all know this. So I just had, these issues with these arguments. And finally, I should point out, they don't need Windows 11 to sell new PCs because new PCs are selling already. We are in literally the biggest market right now for computers in probably the last decade. Dell just came out with their numbers this week, did huge, beat expectations, doing well. Lenovo is crushing it. Lenovo is the #1 shipper of PCs in the world, and they're doing just a bang-up job. breaking quarters, and it's driven by PC, right? I know these companies sell other things, but I'm here to tell you it's other stuff that is it's not other stuff, sorry. It's the PC sales that are driving all of this. Lenovo said that they expect a strong PC market to continue through 2025. So there are just like a bunch of reasons here. I'm actually trying to find the article. I might have actually gone live, but I just want to kind of quote myself on something here. Oh yeah, the article is live now on Windows Central if you want to see it. But you know, oh yeah, the world has changed dramatically in the last 18 months. PC sales are already up year over year. And basically the pandemic changed how we work. So the market is already being driven by a lot of people buying these new PCs. It's already happening. All Microsoft is doing is giving you a new operating system to go along with that. But they did all these record sales from Dell, from Lenovo, even HP. HP and Microsoft both have this problem where they can't ship enough product because they don't have enough processors. They did all that with Windows 10. They don't need Windows 11, right? Windows 11 just makes that deal better. So I just want to keep that in mind. I don't think there's no conspiracy here. They don't need Windows 11 to sell new PCs. People need new PCs because the world and the work environment has completely changed. Okay.
I will add that I do agree that Windows 11 isn't a sole reason why you would want to buy a new PC. However, I do think it does sweeten the deal. If you are somebody who has a PC that is 2 or 3 years old and you walk into a Best Buy and Windows 11's been out for 6 months or a year, the idea that it is running a newer OS, a shinier new OS, I think does add to the allure of buying that PC you see that you really like. And it does certainly give off the impression that your PC is older, much older than it actually is, because of that reason. Like, this has always been the case back in the day as well. If you were running Windows XP and you went into a Best Buy or whatever and you saw loads of PCs with Windows Vista looks shiny and new. It kind of encouraged you to go out and actually make that purchase. And that's always been the case with the same Windows 7 to Windows 8, Windows 8 to Windows 10, and now Windows 10 to Windows 11. It's always a factor, but I do agree that it's not the sole reason why you would want to buy a PC. Nobody's looking at their HP Spectre from a year and a half ago and going, I've got to buy a new one now because Windows 11's around the corner.
No, that doesn't. I'm sure there are power users and stuff like that that fit that category, of course, but they were already thinking about getting a new laptop.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, the way I would describe it is that cliche, right? It's the cherry. Windows 11 is the cherry on top of all of this. For once, let's give Microsoft credit. They're getting a product out right when there's a wave happening.
Yeah.
We are in this massive wave of PC sales. And I quote a couple industry leaders and stuff like that talking about this. I think it was Micron, who makes a DRAM and NAND for computers, said that they're shipping, the industry is basically shipping 1 million PCs a day at this point. There is a massive wave going on, and it's going to continue going on for the next 3 years at least. And Microsoft is riding that wave with Windows 11. And you're right, if you're going to go buy a new laptop, it having Windows 11 and a new shiny OS is a good thing. It does sweeten the deal, and it's perfect timing. But it's not like Microsoft came out with Windows 11 because PC sales were lagging and they're looking to spark things up. That's a good reason too to do it, but that's not what's happening. What's happening is it's the reverse, right? The sales are happening. They're just bringing Windows 11 there because of the new market. People work from home. They do need Microsoft Teams, like all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see though. We'll see how the sales go. And also I should say, Microsoft hasn't made the case for buying a new PC with Windows 11 yet. We'll see that on September 22nd. I think you're going to see a lot of this new hardware on September 22nd, and you're going to be like, oh, I want that hardware, which happens to come with Windows 11. And that's up to them. But you're right, past experiences with Windows, right? What was the big deal with Windows 3 and 3.1? Well, it was the first popularized GUI experience for an operating system, right? It was that new interface. Windows 95 took that to a new level, but it also focused on the World Wide Web internet thing that was happening at the time, built it right into the operating system. And then, Vista just made you hate your computer. And Windows made you hate your computer, but it also allowed you to buy a completely new form factor. So, but yeah, Windows 11 isn't that, right? Windows 11 is just Windows 10 improved.
Yeah, well, we do think there will be some minor hardware advances, such as we mentioned, Wake on Approach built in, or Wake on Touch, or the other one which I can't remember now, the dynamic refresh rate and stuff. Because don't get me wrong, there have been high refresh rate displays running Windows 10 for a long time, but Windows has never, air quotes, sort of been able to tap into that and dynamically adjust that. That will be a thing with Windows 11, and we assume that these new Windows 11 PCs will sort of tap into that.
Right, exactly. I mean, you're going to want to buy these new devices because of the new hardware advancements. Yeah, you mentioned was that there's the tapping into displays to wake it up, haptic pens,
Yep.
the dynamic high refresh rates for the displays, and then I mentioned about the 12th gen Intel stuff coming later on, where it's going to be optimized for battery life. So there's the hardware argument, or you're going to see something like Surface Laptop Studio, which we're expecting this radical read-new design with a pull-it-forward display that's super powerful. Like, you're going to look at that hardware and you're going to be like, oh, dang, I want that. The fact it comes with Windows 11 is just going to be like, okay, cool, it comes with Windows 11. But like I said, no one's going to, I don't think regular people are going to be like, throw away this old 3-year-old laptop and I need Windows 11. Like, that's just not, no one thinks like that. Come on. It's like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that's my rant. Anywho, I guess that wraps up for the podcast. Look at that, 1 hour and 15 minutes.
You want to do your thing of the week?
Yep, we'll do thing of the week. Zach, you can go first.
Sure. So I have a thing of the week. Hooray! My thing of the week this week is a video game that I played recently. It came out back in August, I think, called 12 Minutes. It's on Xbox. I think it's on PlayStation. It's on PC. It's a sort of point and click top-down game, but it's very story-driven. It's sort of like a thriller, mystery type thing. I enjoyed it great. It's about, you can probably get through it in maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours if you sort of are on the ball and you figure out everything. A bit longer if you're sort of clicking around and getting stuck. I got stuck a couple times. But essentially, the premise, I won't spoil anything, but the premise is you are stuck in a 10 or 12 minute loop. I assume 12 minutes. It's called 12 minutes. 12-minute loop. And you need to solve the puzzle within those 12 minutes before it resets and everything goes back to the beginning. And obviously, as you go, you learn more things and have more information, because you retain all the stuff you sort of acquire in these 12 minutes, but then the environment goes back to the default, and the people you interact with go back to their original states. Except you have the knowledge of everything that just happened, and so you can sort of like predict the future and stuff. It's a really cool idea. It can get a bit tiresome because obviously the whole idea of it resetting does get a bit boring, because then you have to like work through all this again and again and again to get up to the point where you went wrong last time to make the right choice. But I think it's worth it. Push through that. It can become a bit of a slog, but I think the ending is great. The twist in it, there is a twist, because there always is a twist in these games. It was unexpected to me. I thought, wow, that's definitely a twist. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. And on Xbox, the achievements are kind of easy as well, and they're all worth quite a lot. I think like one of them's worth 100 Gs and stuff, so definitely worth it, I think. And it's I think it's on Game Pass. So I think that's how I play it. I think it's on Game Pass as well, so definitely grab it.
I think that's it. Yeah, because I remember, yeah, right, when it came out, there was a lot of, it was divisive, right? Some reviewers loved it, some hated it.
Yeah.
So it's been on my list, but yes, we had in our call yesterday. I haven't played a video game in 2 months.
Yeah, and this game you need to sit down and sort of play it. You can't just like aimlessly click through. So
interesting, very cool. My thing of the week is a show that's not new, but it's now on HBO Max, called Warrior. I believe it came out in 2019, 2018. It's 2 seasons in. It was on Cinemax is where it started. And then it was going to be canceled, and then HBO picked it up, and now it's on HBO Max, and I believe they're definitely doing a 3rd season and hopefully a 4th too. Warrior takes place in, I believe, the 1800s in like California, I believe the San Francisco area. It's almost like a cowboy spaghetti western kind of thing, but it focuses on Chinese coming over to the United States, a lot of them building the railroads and stuff like that. But it focuses on gangs that formed during this time called Tongs. And it was originally, I believe, a concept, an idea that Bruce Lee came up with and what he wanted to do. And it's his treatment of it, they turn it into like a full-on show, which is kind of cool. So it has, how to describe it? It's kind of like Game of Thrones in that it's these long kind of stories, because each episode's like 48 minutes long or something. But it has like a lot of kung fu fighting in it, and they're very well choreographed scenes. It's awesome stuff. It has they're very Bruce Lee inspired, the way that they're choreographed. It's very entertaining, and it's like this mix of like Chinese history, American history, Irish history, because the Irish are there too. The racial tensions between the groups, the tensions between the gangs themselves, and of course it's driven by strong characters. I will point out, being on Cinemax in the Game of Thrones reference, there's a lot of gratuitous nudity and sex scenes that are frankly just gratuitous. Like, it's funny, and when I was a teenager, of course, like a sex scene in a movie, I was like, oh yeah, we didn't even have the internet back then, right? That's all you got. Now it's just so like, I can't even like believe, like, if the scene doesn't advance the characters in any way, I'm like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
All I can think about is how these are actors and they're faking it, and there's like cameras behind them. They're like, all right, action. And it's cold. That's all I think about, the meta stuff. So there's a lot of that. So I guess if you're into gratuitous nudity, thumbs up. I thought it was a little ridiculous. I think they're toning it down. I believe probably when it goes to HBO, we'll see, because Game of Thrones was like that initially too. They don't need it. It's a fantastic show without it, because of the characters are very strong. It's interesting history, because a lot of it is based on, like they mention events and stuff like that. It is based on actual U.S. history, with these different groups coming to the U.S. and how things were organized. So you actually kind of learn a lot about this period of time, which to my knowledge has never really been captured in film or movies or long form content. Like, I can't think of the last time I think there might have been a Jackie Chan film a long time ago. That was a cowboy thing, right? But this is cool. So it's called Warrior on HBO Max. This isn't a show you can eat. It's like Expanse. You can't be on your phone while watching this. You're gonna have to really kind of pay attention, because it's a very dense show. But they do a cool thing too. Just one final thing I'll say on it, which is, because a lot of it happens in Mandarin, it's Chinese, but they don't want to make you read subtitles for the whole thing. And they do this kind of cool trick, I believe in the first episode, where when the actor is speaking in Mandarin, and then the camera starts to spin around him. And as the camera goes to the back of him, all of a sudden he switches to English, and it comes back around.
That's cool.
And he's speaking in English. And they do that frequently, where like they allow you to know the difference between the characters are speaking English for you versus speaking English to the
That's
Irish.
very clever. I like that. It's very good.
Yeah, it's just has a certain style to the show, and it's just good drama. You just watch every episode like, the way it ends, and it's just good fighting scenes. It's got a little something for everybody. So Warrior gets my recommendation. Hoping season 3 should be dropping soon. I hope they do a season 4 even. It's just this is that good TV we're in, that good TV long form content I'm really loving. So
awesome.
Cool. Okay, I think that wraps it up for the podcast, Zach. Let's do Q&A with the audience. If we haven't answered anything during this podcast, you can now ask them during the chat session. Of course, if you're listening to this recorded, you don't get to hear that, but you can join us every Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time on our YouTube channel, Windows Central. You can also join our Discord channel. Go to windowscentral.com/Discord to learn about that, where we discuss all this stuff there. You can also follow me on Twitter, Daniel_Rubino, Rubino, and Zach at ZACBOWDEN. And as always, we'll see you next time. Get ready, folks. We're going to have a very busy month, actually next 2 months. So let's get those Surface rumors going. We'll talk to you next time. Take care, everyone.
Done.
And my cat is meowing like crazy.
My current PC is almost 9 years old, and I'm going to buy a new PC just for Windows 11 and of course, the newer specs to join the DevTan channel again. That's 9 years old is a long time for a PC. I'm impressed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can probably list 10 things ahead of Windows 11 of why that PC is going to be a better experience.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Do you think the book 4 will offer RTX 3070? So I don't actually know what RTX series it is. I think Logic suggests it will be the latest, because I think the
no way.
The RTX 30 line has been around for a while, but This is Microsoft, so they could really do last gen if they really wanted to.
We always have to do that.
Yeah.
But it is Microsoft.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense just because I think production of the 2000 series for mobile is pretty much gone. I don't. There's going to be very low volume. They're going to, and the requirements for the 3000 series aren't different from the 2000, so it doesn't require any kind of crazy stuff. Like if you're going to use one, there's no reason why I can't use the other. So I think a 3070 is probably a shoo-in.
Yeah. Speaking of reasons for buying new hardware, as a Surface Pro 4 owner, what do I have to look forward to with the Surface Pro 8? Well, I would guess basically a Pro X but with an Intel chip is essentially what I think it's going to come down to. So if you like the look of the Pro X, maybe slightly thicker, and no LTE or 5G.
Batteries and
it's true. Yeah,
you don't get the
bigger display. Yeah. So yeah, I think.
No, but I mean, it's like coming from a Surface Pro 4, that was the quintessential Surface Pro, right? That's the one that started it all.
Still based on today, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. This one is going to, I think it's going to be a slightly larger display with thinner bezels. The performance is going to be night and day.
Oh yeah.
You're going to go from a dual core chip to the latest quad core, along with things like Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.2, I'm assuming, but I don't see why it wouldn't be. So even just basic things like connectivity to your devices and accessories is just going to be better, more reliable. Your battery life is going to be much higher with this. The fans, it will be much quieter if you get the i7. If you get the i5, you won't have any fans. The display quality will be improved. Probably a higher refresh on that display, which is going to be a whole experience in itself. You get that newer pen, that haptic pen is going to be there, I imagine, which is going to really, it's going to be a lot of small things. It's going to really add up to a completely new experience. I think going from a Surface Pro to a Pro 8 is going to be well worth it. Definitely worth considering.
Yeah. Will unsupported devices get updates if we download via ISO? Because other outlets are saying no, and it's getting confusing. Yes, it's confusing because Microsoft's own wording around that topic specifically was very ambiguous. They said may or may not to a lot of people in regards to whether or not unsupported PCs would get security updates and driver updates. I would say that it's probably going to be yes, based on the fact that they are being ambiguous. If it was an outright no, they would just say no. But I think they're being this way because it discourages people from doing this in the first place, because they don't want people using Windows 11 unless their PC is officially supported. But if we look at history, Windows 10, you can install Windows 10 on unsupported CPUs today, and it will pull in the latest security updates and cumulative updates and whatnot, and it works just fine.
Has a checker. They have a little app that tells you if your CPU qualifies for Windows 10.
Exactly, and it works just fine. And I would be very shocked if that changes with Windows 11.
I mean, this should be evident. The reason they don't want people doing this is because if people do it and they have problems, they're going to go on Twitter, they're going to Facebook. Oh, Windows 11 sucks. It's crashing on my PC, without telling you that they installed it on unsupported hardware. Technically, Microsoft does. Knowing that, if you do have a problem, you might want to go to Microsoft like, hey, I'm having this issue. And it's going to be, they're not obligated now to help you with that, right? So they don't want to be responsible when they told you it's unsupported. So basically it can cause a headache for them. So they'd rather not acknowledge that publicly. It would also undermine. They can't be like, yeah, you can install this on a 10-year-old PC and it'll run just fine. They can't say that, then also say it's unsupported. It's like those contradict each other. It's like, well, which is it? You're sending a mixed message. So they're trying to send a single message. But there's a wink and a nod there saying, yeah, we're not going to, they told us they're not going to block it from installing on hardware. Yeah. They know people are going to.
Yeah. Do you think the Surface Pro 8 type cover will be compatible with the Surface Pro 6? I do not. I think the Pro 8 type cover will be the same one that the Pro X uses. So they may hopefully be cross-compatible now, and they'll have like the charging cradle and stuff. But yeah, I don't think the Pro 8 type covers will be backwards compatible with the Pro 7 and 6 and stuff. They've been using that connector since the Pro 1. I think this is the exact same connector since then, so yeah.
I think it's been slightly modified, but here and there a little bit.
Maybe, yeah, but I think the pin connector's been the same, whereas on the Pro X it's an entirely different pin connector.
I think it changed with Surface Pro 4. I think
you could. No, you didn't, because it would have been Pro 3, because you could use the Pro 3 keyboards on the Pro 4. I remember them being explicit about that. people ask about Duo 2, Android 11, or Duo with Android 11, or what improvements. Again, the theory is because Android 11 natively supports dual screen, that the sort of multitasking of moving windows between the screens and stuff, and scrolling and touch sensitivity and whatnot will be much improved. Outside of that, we don't really know. I have heard that there's a couple of sort of new features coming. Not many for the first Duo, at least. One of them being that there's a feature to automatically span apps. So, say for example, you have Outlook, and you usually you open it on one screen because you tap on it on that screen. It opens on one screen, and then you span it to the middle. You can go into settings now and actually tell the OS to automatically span that app when you open it. So when you tap on it, it takes up both screens, and that's nice. The other one is I heard they were working on a feature which would allow you to configure whether or not when you fold it into single screen mode, it uses the gyros to sort of figure out which screen you're looking at. But I heard they were at least considering a feature where you could just specify in settings which one you want it to go to by default. So say you usually look at the right one, so you can just tell it, hey, I always go into single screen mode using the right screen, so just automatically assume I'm doing that and forget about the left screen, which I guess simplifies the process. I don't know if that will actually ship. I know it was something they were experimenting with, but small quality of life things like that, I think, is what we will sort of see with Android 11, and just a general smoother OS experience.
What do you think about the renders that someone made on Twitter about the new laptop Studio Book 4? So we posted those. I thought overall it was a pretty accurate thing of what we're expecting, at least based on the patents, except for the rear.
Yeah, the lid.
The rear showed the hinge and all that. I don't think they're going to have a cover on that. You won't notice it, just like the folio. You have to remember, a patent is about that hinge design. That's all they care about. It's not about making it look pretty. It's not about the colors and all that kind of stuff.
I think the best way to describe this laptop, if it ships as what we think it will ship, is, if you look at the Surface Pro, the keyboard attaches to the tablet and stuff. I assume this is an actual hard base, not floppy. On this new laptop, instead of it being attached there and then the kickstand coming out, the keyboard will simply just be attached to the kickstand. So the laptop, so the display can sit this way. So you can pull it forward and stuff, and then close it and shut it that way. That was a very rough demo of what I was trying to describe. But something along those lines, where the kickstand is now the sort of spine of the actual backbone of the device, and the keyboard is attached to that. It doesn't detach because it's a non-detachable thing. And then you can pull the display forward by basically lowering it like that. And then that would obviously cover the keyboard stuff. That's basically how it's been described to me. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see, of course.
And HP solved this by putting basically a fake leather around the device, which also just made it look kind of cool and feels really nice, and backs up the name of a folio. But it was also done to hide that rear kind of hinge. Of course, Acer has its own pull it forward design, and they don't do that, either. So there are different ways to do that. So I just would say the back of the device, I think, will look way nicer on the Surface one.
Yeah. When will they release Android 11 for Duo? I would suspect next month, probably when the Duo 2 starts shipping. I think that'll probably be on the same day or round about the same day.
Any news and interesting Surface accessories coming for ProBook Go? No, that's one area where we typically don't get many leaks on. Oh, they can always message us on Twitter, and we'll look at those leaks.
I hope they do new keyboards with the Windows logo, because obviously all their keyboards have the old flag right now. So that'd be nice.
They would.
Yeah.
What the funny thing is, the accessories tend to be kind of really interesting. We're expecting, I would suspect for Duo 2, you would see more accessories, because that would line up this idea that it's expanding and they're doing more around it. What that means, I can't tell you at this point, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see more case options, ways to hold the pen, maybe even something for gaming. I don't know, but hopefully we'll see more of that stuff.
Will the Android 11 update for the Duo come with new experiences in the Microsoft launcher to match Windows 11 look and feel with more control over settings? No. Android, they've made a clear distinction, at least for now, that the Duo experience remains very sort of Android-y. They want it to be familiar to Android users. They don't want to try and mimic Windows. So it will look very much like the launcher does of today, and the experience will be very Android-esque.
For unsupported systems running Windows 11, if you want security updates, but not frequently, can't you just download and install the ISO? Yeah, You can do that, or you can still just download updates manually and do it
Yeah.
that way too. I mean, for real hardcore people who don't want to take Windows updates, you can do it. So there are always workarounds to this stuff, assuming like your system breaks or whatever, which I don't think it'll happen.
Do you think it's possible that Microsoft skips laptops and pros this year for Go's and Studios since we got refreshed laptops and pros in January and April? I do not. We won't see a new Surface laptop, like just the actual Surface laptop. Like there won't be a Surface Laptop 5 because that was in fact just refreshed. But the Pro 7 Plus in January was a commercial only product. There wasn't a consumer release. In fact, if you look at Microsoft's social feeds and stuff, whenever they talk about the Pro, they still refer to the Pro 7 as the sort of latest Surface Pro because that was the last one that was aimed at a general market. So the Pro is certainly overdue, and we are almost 100% confident that we will see a new Pro 8 at this event. No Laptop 5. We might see this Book 4, whatever they want to call it, Laptop Pro. Those are, I think, almost certainly going to be announced. The Duo Pro 8 / X and this flagship laptop are basically for definite. Then everything else is to be seen.
Well, all the new inbox apps ship with Windows 11. Yeah, but we haven't seen like new mail, like the One Mail thing. Which
that won't be there this year. So most of them will be like the new Paint and stuff, I assume is what you're referring to. They will ship with Windows 11. They will likely be pulled in through the store, though. I don't think they'll be inbox. But yeah.
Can we expect a new Surface mouse? Probably. I could see them just having a bunch of new updated accessories that won't get a ton of attention, but sure.
Is the Xbox One being listed on the Windows Store, the Windows subsystem for Android Store page, an error, or Microsoft really setting Android apps on Xbox? I think it's just an error. I think this Android thing is for Windows desktop only, not for Xbox.
Wow, Android apps on my TV.
Even better.
Android apps on my PC. My God. Now I can check Instagram on Xbox.
Do you think that Panos being kind of promoted to the new staff list opens up more freedom for him to bring new ideas on Surface side, or does it go more towards integration with Windows itself? I think both, really. I think, for a long time the Surface team were very much limited in what Windows was doing because Panos didn't have that wasn't in charge with that. And I think the first Andromeda was a real sort of effort in trying to build a UX on Windows designed with the hardware in mind. It didn't happen. It didn't work. They tried again with the Neo. Didn't happen. Didn't work. But that was all when Panos wasn't leading Windows. Now Panos is leading Windows, air quotes. So who knows? I think what we will definitely see a tighter integration between the UX, the software, and the hardware form factors because of that. When, I don't know. Maybe as soon as this fall. Maybe not until next year or the year after. We don't know because obviously he's been in charge since February last year now. So he's had some time to sort of think about what he wants from the integration between Windows and Surface. So I'll be interested to see what happens there. Do you think the Windows team will address the volume rocker UI update before the end of this month? I do not think so. I think what the latest beta channel build is essentially what will be shipping at this point. I've been told they're at feature lock. There's no other things going into the builds. I do not think. I would love to be wrong about that, but I don't think I am. Excuse me, my goodness. Tried to mute my mic, but missed it. Tongue-in-cheek naming for the new low-cost Surface laptop. Surface laptop, go home. Yeah, no. I see, this thing is so cheap, I don't even know if it's going to be called a Surface. That's how low-end this device is supposed to be. If you think about Surface, it's supposed to be sort of premium. Even though the Go is $400, it's still a premium device with a high-res display and stuff. This laptop that I've heard about is not that. It's plastic, low-res screen. It's really very much, so Microsoft has two hardware lines. If you're unaware, they have the sort of Surface line, and then they have the Microsoft PCA line. PCA for personal computing accessories, I believe it stands for. That is when you see things like this keyboard. This isn't a Surface keyboard. This is a Microsoft designer keyboard. Microsoft has its own sort of generic branding for non-Surface branded stuff. I think this laptop could fall under that. It would be like a Microsoft laptop or Microsoft, student book or something. I don't know what they're going to call it. It's total speculation. But based on what I've heard and seen about on this laptop, it is very cheap. So, I'd be shocked if it's called Surface.
Have I received the MSI Prestige 14? No. I don't really talk that often with MSI, Acer, and Asus. I don't know why. I
What
get a
would,
lot of this review.
what would make a better reading in bed device to replace my Surface Pro 4? A Surface Pro 8 or a Surface Go 3? I think the Go 3 would be better for reading because it's smaller and it's easier to sort of hold and stuff. The Pro 8 line, or the Pro line, is very much sort of laptop sized. I think it's just very on the small side of laptops. Don't get me wrong, but they're still very sort of laptop sized. I love the Go size. I think it's great. I think
Yeah, holding 2 pounds. It's still holding 2 pounds.
Yeah, but it's big.
No, I'm saying, but right, that's what I'm saying with the Surface Pro. I'm like, it gets tiring.
Yeah, and the Go is very manageable. So,
yeah. Do you think jump lists will come back to Win 11 taskbar and start menu? So I see a lot of people complain about this stuff, the jump lists, the drag and drop. I assume so, but I don't think it's a priority. It's definitely not shipping with in October, that's for sure. But I don't know what the plans are for like drag and drop and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, technically an operating system is never finished, right? So there's always going to be things that they can add and improve upon, but they're getting the basics out there. And it's a pretty major overhaul considering they did it in a year. So
why would they do a cheap laptop and not a Surface Studio monitor? Probably because the Studio monitor will be too expensive for most people to buy, and a cheap laptop can be bought by millions of people. Yeah, I don't know, honestly. Like, I'd like to see them do both, really, but apparently the Studio monitor is a thing that will never happen because Microsoft doesn't know how.
I think it's a hard, yeah, I don't know. It's a tough sell too, I think, but.
Okay, any more questions? We'll be wrapping up in a minute, so get them in now before it's too late.
Has Panos or anyone high up there asked for some information about Surface that got into your hands to not be published? No.
I have heard of that happening, though. No, maybe I'm not. Not specifically. I don't think they've ever asked us not to publish info that we have. Only because I was really bad at telling them I had the info. I used to just post the info, just a surprise.
They did not like.
Okay, here's what I will say. And to give them credit, I have given them heads up for some stories, and they've basically just said, "All right, whatever, go with it." Which I think's insane. But yeah, they're very not. I don't think they really have leverage to say no. I guess they could offer us.
No. It's not, and it's not kind of cool. Like you can't ask them, a reporter, about their sources or where you heard that or anything.
Yeah,
like
and even
that.
if they did, you'd say, "Well, I'm not answering that question." That's just why would I answer that question? Did the twist of 12 minutes not pull you away from the main gameplay? I'm not going into the morality debate, but the twist kind of felt like a branch away from the environment. A twist for the sake of twist. I did kind of think that after the fact, but when it happened, I was shocked and I was very invested into how this happened. So no, yeah, after the fact, I did have to think and go, yeah, that was an interesting way to do that, but I don't think it ruined it. When do you think we can expect the next version of Windows 11 in the Babes channel? Probably not for a long while. Probably June, July next year, I would assume. Will Microsoft update Windows 11 every 6 months like Windows 10 or just once a year? Just once a year. So the next major update for Windows 11 will be launching next October. Is it now sure that the Duo 2 will be revealed on September 22nd? This is quite a crazy packed event based on all that you say is supposed to be released, especially if OEMs are invited. Well, we don't know about OEMs. That was pure speculation. We have heard up to 5 Surface devices, which isn't too crazy. I think the 2015 event was more crazy than that. I could be wrong on that. No, Pro 4, Book 1, Band, Lumia 950, Lumia 950 XL, HoloLens. No, there were 6 devices at that event. So, I think 5 is probably fine. Well, how many did they announce in October 2019? Laptop 3, Pro X, Pro 7, Neo, Duo. 5 devices. I think 5 services is probably about right. Yeah. No, I'm not. I don't think it's too crazy packed.
Totally random and off topic, but Zach, did you know Telegram pulled their app from Wear OS?
Why did they do that?
No one knows.
Because Wear OS is just crap.
They're just pulling it off of Google Play, and that's it. We don't know if another one's coming. Also, did you know Android Central still doesn't know how to remove the dark image feature in their backend CMS?
And they'll call them out, I don't you? All right, it's probably... That's probably enough. All right, thank you for tuning. Thank you for tuning, everybody. We'll be back next Friday. Follow us on Twitter. We'll keep you updated on when we go live and all of that good stuff. But until then, we will see you next time. Bye.